It behaves similar in Excel with some minor differences. First, I'm going to do is get some information about the data. I'm going to work on the longevity in years of mammals. So some information I need to know are what's the smallest number, the minimum, what's the larger, the maximum, what's the difference between those two, the range. I'm going to have to make some decisions about how many categories I want to have in my frequency table. Categories also are called bins or buckets or groups. And so let's see, I'll call them bins here. So most spreadsheets have a command, all spreadsheets have a command called min to find the minimum. Usually you want to select just the numbers you need. There's a shortcut to that works most of the time. If the only thing in that column are the numbers you want and maybe a title, then instead of selecting each number by clicking and dragging, you can click on the title. That'll select the whole column. And the max feature only counts numbers, so it's going to ignore the word longevity years. And uniform, let's see, range, that I have to do myself. So equals, because it's a calculation, this number minus that number. All right, and then I have to decide how many bins I want. So maybe I want 9 bins, 9 rows in my frequency table. So now I can figure out what the bin width should be by doing a subtraction, or sorry, a division. Take the range and divide by the number of bins. So each bin should be about 7 to 8 units wide. And because I entered these as formulas, if I change my mind and say, no, I want 10 bins, then I can get an idea of what the width should be for 10 or 7. All right, so I'm going to go for the 9, which means I should make a width of 7 or 8. Maybe I'll go with 7. So once I have that established, then I can start making my bins. So I'm going to come up here, type bins, and then I'll have another column for frequency. Now, for humans, we need to know where the bin starts and where the bin ends. So a mammal isn't going to have a longevity of 0. It's going to start at 1. So maybe I would have from 1 to 7 as a bin. And then the next, that would actually be a width of 8. That's all right. And then the next one is going to be from, 8 to 16. And an important thing about their bins, they should be the same width. So here, 1 is included and 7 is included. Oh, no, that's what 7 is. So 7 minus 0 would be 7. And then, so that one's too wide again. Oh, change it to a date. So sometimes when you type these things, the computer tries to automatically do it for you. So we want to reformat the number as just plain text. That's better. So I want to go to 15. So the distance between the lower numbers should be the same. 8 minus 1 is 7. And then, did I do this wrong too? Yes, I cannot count today. And then 14 minus 7 is 7. That looks better. Yep. And then the next one would be from 15 to 21. That one can't be confused as a date, so the computer didn't mess with it. So this is what humans need to understand the groups of numbers we're counting. Frequency means to count. Goes out. Here, human bins for now. The computer, in order to count, only needs the maximum number for each bin. So the computer just wants to know 7 is the highest number for that grouping. 14 is the highest number for that grouping. Once you have a pattern, you can then highlight those two and fill down. And you want to get at least to your max, is my recommendation. I'm going to ditch the human readable bins for now. We'll come back to that. So again, for the computer frequency command, we need to know what's the maximum acceptable number for each category. Then what you do is highlight all of the frequency cells next to a bin number plus 1. Start typing equals frequency. Tab, Windows computer, and then you want to select your data. Comma, once you select your data, you want to select your classes, bins, or buckets. You have your column, you have the calling them classes. Close parentheses. Now on a Windows computer, Control-Shift-Enter is what you do. Say in Microsoft Excel, on a Mac in Excel, you would do Command-Shift-Enter. In Sheets, we can just hit Enter. And so what it's going to do, it's going to count how many numbers are 7 or less. How many numbers are bigger than 7 but up to 14? How many numbers are bigger than 14 but up to 21? So I get my frequencies there. Let's just clean this up a little bit. Sometimes we want to know what the relative frequency is. So let's take a look at that. Relative frequency is the percentage of numbers in each category coming down here. So in order to find that, I need to know what the total is. I'm going to make a note here that I'm going to get total, and I want to add up the frequencies. There's a formula called sum for adding up numbers. So how many numbers are in my list? Here says there are 43. To verify that, there's another formula called count. And count will count numbers. Notice there's a bunch of different count formulas. So I could just go to this column and say, hey, count all the numbers in that column. And it's going to ignore words. It's only going to count numbers. So yeah, there are 43 numbers there. So relative frequency here, I just want to go equals, what's the frequency count divided by the total count? Here gives it as a decimal, and then I can use the format percent as a percent button to format this percent. Once I've done that, I can then fill that down. It'll do the same calculation for each cell. And then just to double check, the relative frequencies should add up to 100%. So if I do another sum for that column, I get 100%. All right, continuing a little farther. Sometimes with frequencies, we want to know what the cumulative relative frequency is. So what that means is we add up as we collect things. So cumulative relative frequency. So the first one, there's only one number to use. For the second one, we want to take the previous amount above and add the new amount to the left. And this will accumulate all of my percentages, all of my frequencies. So I can just fill that second formula down, the one that accumulates, and I should find that the last cell says you have 100% in the end. And that's called a cumulative relative frequency. That's what we have there. Cool thing about the way I set this up is here I have a bin width of 7 is what I started with. If I want to change it, I can. Now, the way I have it set up here, because I have this last cell and the total, I can't use a bin width smaller than 7 because that means I'll have more rows than I have room for. But I could go bigger. I could see what a bin width of 8 looks like. So that would be 8, and then 16 because I started at 0. Highlight the 8 and 16 to continue that pattern, fill it down. Notice it goes beyond where I need it to, so I hit that 0. There's no more new numbers sooner, but what I do is it just recalculates everything for me. It's kind of nice. Do that again. Maybe I can see what 9 looks like. This one should be 18. Fill that pattern down. So I can make bigger widths than what I started with, but I can't go smaller because I run out of room down here. I'd have to start over for that. All right, that's it for frequency, relative frequency, and cumulative relative frequency in a spreadsheet. Have fun.